Writing and thinking are the same. Writing and critical thinking are two sides of the same coin. That's why we encourage our students to write assignments, to write reports, papers, theses, etc. So in this connection, I will share some of my experiences, some of the tips and techniques that can make your writing understandable, easy to read, and effective. At the end of this session, I hope you will be able to understand that writing is an art. So we are doing science, but how we present it, this is a pure art. If you give the same data to two different people, the way they write or present would be totally different. Scientific writing is an art, but it is also different from other forms of literary writings like story, fiction, novel, etc. In literary writings, the writers write to express. They keep or maintain a suspense till the end of story or movie or drama or whatsoever. But in scientific writing, we try to bring clarity right from the start. So we write to express, not to impress. So in this connection, we need to maintain a balance between the content and the creativity, so that we are not overemphasizing either of the two. So we can use visuals to script quality. We have a very learned guest speaker with us today, and we will try to learn from it how to use visuals to enhance manuscript quality. But students must understand, and those who are writing thesis, they would be surely now aware of this, that writing is not a linear process. It's a zigzag process, and it's a painful process. And writing concisely and clearly takes time. So I would like to share some of the basic principles for effective writing. I would like to share some 10 basic principles that can make your writing easier to read, effective. There are different forms of scientific communication, and the ABC of communication is A for accurate, B for brief, and C for clear. So the tips and techniques that I would share would help you to exercise this ABC of communication. So it's very important, as I mentioned earlier, to maintain a balance between the content and creativity, so that we are not overemphasizing content or not overemphasizing the creativity. Words make sentences, sentences makes a paragraph, and with paragraphs we write sections, and sections make research paper, technical report, thesis, etc. So starting from the choice of words. The words that we use or choose in scientific writing should be simple, concrete, appropriate, and accurate. I give you some of the examples. Scientific writings are read not only by native speakers, but also by non-native speakers like us. So we need to use simpler and familiar words. So instead of utilize, we can write use. Instead of prioritize, we can write rank. Instead of terminate, we can write end. Instead of ascertain, we can write find, and so on. There are so many. These are some of the examples. So the words that we use should be simpler and familiar. Often we think that if we use difficult language that is not understandable, there are more chances of publication. But it's the other way around. As I mentioned earlier, we write to express, not to impress. And the words that we use should be concrete. So one way to make your writing or words or sentences concrete is to use strong verbs instead of nouns. The B of communication is to keep it brief, B for brief. So instead of nouns, for example, if we write decision, then we need to write made a decision. So 3 words. But if we use a strong verb like decided, instead of 3 words, we are just using 1. Likewise, instead of reached a conclusion, we can write concluded. Instead of took into consideration, we can write considered, and so on. And there are some of the sentences that are vague. In scientific writing, for example, हम अक्सर कहते हैं कि कपड़े छोटे हो गए, हालांकि कपड़े छोटे नहीं होते, साइंटिफिकली बच्चे बड़े हो जाते हैं. So in scientific writing, we have to present it in that way. So if I write a sentence like, I actually failed to attend the class yesterday due to many reasons, this is a vague sentence scientifically. But if I write it as, I failed to attend organic chemistry class yesterday because I had fever, this is a complete sentence. The sunset was beautiful. This is a vague sentence. The sun glowed with orange light. And if we are writing it scientifically, we will also write the wavelength in brackets. We collected samples frequently during the growing seasons. So this is a vague sentence. We collected 50 soil samples at weekly interval between April and June. So this is more concrete. The words that we use should also be appropriate. Often we are confused with the use of prepositions. For example, we use in or at or upon, etc. So one tip is that if you are confused, in most of the cases, in more than 90% cases, for is almost always safe when you are not sure which preposition to use. And we can use just one word instead of a whole phrase. For example, due to the fact that and because, they mean the same thing. So instead of writing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 letters, we can just write 1 letter. This will make our writing brief as well as clear. Prior to the start of is same as before. On a regular basis is same as regularly. Seems to suggest is same as suggest. And at this point in time is same as now. And there are some waste words. For example, if we write, it is interesting to note that the reviewer of good research journals or an expert reviewer often has an impression that maybe the results are not so interesting and we are trying to bring them in limelight, or we are overemphasizing our results, or we are not accurately presenting our results. So your data must speak, and your results should be explained their accordance and contrast with the published literature. Similarly, is the case when we write, it must be pointed out. And if we write that it has long been known and don't mention the reference, the reviewer gets an impression that the author is too lazy to find a reference for that. So even a simpler sentence, for example, if I write that what is the most limiting factor for crop production, we all know this, but even for this simpler sentence, we need to mention references. So these are waste words. These should be avoided. Likewise, there are some vague words like really, extremely, very, dramatically, quite, few, little, large, small, etc. Scientifically, we need to present numbers. Scientific writing, numbers are important. So these words like really, extremely, very, dramatically, quite, few, little, large, small, this should be avoided. And we can also get around, for example, as non-native speakers, often our articles are infested with the word the. So it can be avoided. For example, if we make the noun plural, instead of the result, if we write results, then we don't need to write the with results. Similarly, in case of respectively, if we write respectively, the author has, the reader has to go back to match sentences. For example, if I say yield of Shine Basmati, Super Basmati, and Nayab Basmati were 4, 7, and 5 tons per hectare, then reader has to match again. He has to go back, and nobody likes to go back. So if we write yield of Shine Basmati was 5 tons per hectare, The Naya Basmati was 7 tons per hectare and Super Basmati was 5 tons per hectare. That's okay. And there are some inefficient words. For example, water shortage caused a significant reduction in crop yields. And if I write water shortage reduced the crop yields, it means the same thing. Water shortage reduced the crop yields, but with fewer words. Our report gives a review of new trends in processing industry is same as our report reviews new trends in processing industry, but now I'm writing in fewer words. Similarly, there are different inefficient words. For example, literature is always previous because that is already published. So we don't need to write the previous with literature. Similarly, instead of during the course of the experiment, we can write during the experiment. Different alternatives means alternatives. Different varieties, just we can write varieties. And there are some other examples. So, so far I have explained that the word we choose in scientific writing should be simpler, familiar, and appropriate. And now the last point, the words that or sentences that we write should also be accurate. For example, they should be scientifically correct. For example, if I write rice development is divided into 3 phases, somebody else can say that rice development is divided into 2 phases, vegetative and reproductive phase, or rice development is divided into 4 phases. So we don't need to be assertive in our writing. So if I write it as rice development can be divided into 3 phases, that's perfectly okay. And we should avoid approximation. For example, if I write, we interviewed approximately 900 farmers. So approximately 900 could be 905 or could be 895 or 890. So we should write the exact numbers where possible. So in case of accuracy, we should distinguish our opinions from facts based on the data we are presenting. We should not be assertive and we should use credible sources where necessary. So this is the first principle of effective writing, that is the words that we use should be simple, familiar, appropriate, and accurate. Words make sentences, so the structure of sentences are paragraphs. Again, same is the rule, keep it short and simple. For example, if I write rice is the main crop worldwide that is eaten by more than half of the world's population, it means the same as rice feeds nearly half of the world's population. We can distinguish different types of sentences. Topic sentence is the opening sentence or starting sentence. The tip in writing topic sentences is that the topic sentence should open with the most important message. For example, I have written 2 sentences. Sustainability of rice-based systems is challenged by decreasing water availability. And decreasing water availability threatens the sustainability of rice-based systems. So apparently, these 2 sentences mean the same. But the first sentence is starting with sustainability. So most probably this paragraph is about sustainability. And the second sentence is starting with decreasing water availability. It means that this paragraph is about the decreasing water availability. So topic sentence or most important sentence should be catchy, and it should start with the words or sentences which describe which you are going to discuss in the paragraph. Then we have simple sentences which have one main idea. For example, rice feeds 50% of our population. Water availability will decide the future of our rice system. These are examples of simple sentences. And compound sentences are those sentences which have 2 main ideas. And these 2 ideas are joined by a conjugation. However, whereas, as an example, rice feeds 50% of world's population. and consumes 30% of world's freshwater resources. There is another sentence structure that is if-then. If-then structure shows the cause and effect relation. This structure is especially useful when you are writing the research and discussion part of your paper or thesis. For example, if water input increases in dry systems, then rice yield increases, but water productivity decreases. If we increase industrial labor wages, then agricultural labor will be difficult to find. So sentences make paragraphs like sentences, like simple sentences which have one main idea or message. A paragraph should also have ideally one main idea. And the length of paragraph depends on the length of idea. Often students ask what should be the length of section or paragraph. So the length of paragraphs, there is no hard and fast rule. It depends on the length of the idea. There are three main parts of a paragraph, which are a topic sentence or the opening sentence, which should start with the most important thing. You need to mind the order. Then there is main body of the paragraph, and then there is a concluding sentence. And this concluding sentence, especially if you are writing a review of literature, should be a summary of the whole paragraph or section. And if you are writing some other section, ideally it should be a transition sentence. It should link to the next paragraph or section. I will talk about the coherence and transitions in a few minutes. So a paragraph should have ideally one main idea. The length of paragraph depends on the length of idea. It has three sections: topic sentence, main body, concluding sentence. Paragraph should be coherent, and for coherence we can use transition. This brings me to the third principle, that write coherently. As I mentioned earlier, if we are अगर हम एक paragraph में रबत बनाना चाहते हैं, we are trying to write coherently, we should discuss, we should present or write one main idea with a paragraph. Paragraph should start with a topic sentence or the most important message, and we move forward with that idea. For example, there is a sentence: water scarcity challenges the sustainability of conventional rice paddy systems in Pakistan. So there are three key words in this sentence: water scarcity, sustainability, and the production system, that is conventional rice paddy system. So there are, if in this paragraph we are starting with water scarcity, which is challenging the sustainability and threatening the conventional rice paddy system, so we should not jump directly from point A to C. We should move from point A to B and then to C. For example, we should discuss water scarcity, how it affects the sustainability of rice-based systems, and then we discuss the constraints or problems this is causing for our conventional rice paddy systems. We can use suitable transitions for continuity. I will talk about this in a sec. And we need to tell the reader what to expect and then tell it. For example, if I write the sentence, our two-step approach measure two types of parameters, and then I stop the sentence here, finish the sentence here, then the reader is not clear which type of parameters. So we should tell the reader what to expect and then also tell it. Do not till the end. So we can write this as our two-step approach measure two types of parameters: photoperiod and temperature. And then since I have mentioned photoperiod first, so the next sentence should start with the photoperiod. So that is how we can create coherence between paragraphs. Fourth, an important principle is that we should avoid errors related to grammar or punctuation. For example, we are often confused with the use of may and might. We use may where we are almost sure. Maybe means can be, may not means cannot be. Whereas we use might where we are not sure. We are just speculating. or we don't have sufficient data to support our claims, then we use might. So if we are sure, we can use may or can. Similarly, strictly speaking, especially in American write-up, they use the word relationship only for human beings and the word relation for all other non-human things. Similarly, we are confused about the use of that and which. That is used where we are classifying crop. For whereas which is used where we are trying to part of the sentence. Similarly, when we translate while and whereas, in Urdu we translate it as jabke. Jabke ये दोनों same नहीं है. While is used where there is a time dimension. For example, I saw him while I was traveling to Lahore. And in whereas, strictly speaking, we can use where there is no time dimension. Scientific names we should preferably write scientific names, and I hope all of you are aware how to write these. Then there are some differences between American and British English. For example, there are differences in spellings. For example, fertilize may talk about punctuations X, comma, Y, and Z. This is the British style. Whereas in American style, we need to add comma even before and, because according to Americans, in first case where we are not adding comma before add means that X is one group and Y plus Z is group 2. But if we add comma before and, it means X, Y, and Z are 3 groups or 3 items. So these are some of the examples of the different accents of English. Then often as in scientific writing, we have to write comparative sentences. For example, yield level of Galaxy 2013 was higher. So this is a vague sentence. We need to, when we are writing comparative sentence, we must mention the control treatment or what we are comparing to. So if I write A is taller, this is a vague sentence. I must mention A is taller than B. The yield level of Galaxy 2013 was higher than Anaj 17. And often as non-native speakers, our sentences don't have agreement between subject and verb. For example, often we write one of my friend was kidnapped. Actually, it is one of my friends was kidnapped. There is 3 types of cosmetic products in the market. Actually, there are 3 types. Neither treatment 1 nor treatment 2 was effective and not verb. Often we write data was analyzed. Data is plural, datum is singular. And we must avoid the ambiguity. Which words create ambiguity? This, these, they, it, only. These are words which create ambiguity. As an example, results of surveys suggest that increasing food availability is linked to availability of credit facilities, awareness campaigns, and government policies. This shows that food security has bright prospects in South Asia. So here we are not clear what this is referring to, whether it is referring to results or survey or to food availability or whatsoever. Likewise, if we write, we measured copper and zinc only. Only we measured copper and zinc. We only measured copper and zinc. So all of these 3 sentences mean different things. So, and this creates confusion amongst readers. So instead of using these ambiguous words, this, these, they, it, only, we should try to minimize them or eliminate. This brings me to the next principle, that is use of suitable transitions. In video editing softwares or in movies, dramas, we often observe that when you move from one scene to the next scene, this transition is not abrupt. फॉर एग्जाम्पल अगर कोई ड्रामा है, उसका टाइटल नाम है घर, तो जब वो एक सीन से दूसरे सीन में कट करते हैं तो घर सामने आ जाता है. इट मीन्स के वी आर मूविंग फ्रॉम वन सीन टू द नेक्स्ट सीन. बाज़ औक़ात एक सीन फेड हो जाता है और उससे नेक्स्ट सीन स्टार्ट हो जाता है. आई होप ऑल ऑफ यू आर अवेयर ऑफ दिस. सो वेयर वी यूज ट्रांजिशंस to create coherence, to link ideas, to make ideas cohesive, and show how ideas relate. As examples, if we are moving from one paragraph to the next paragraph, we can write at the end of first paragraph a suitable example. For example, if we are talking about water scarcity, and in the next paragraph we are proposing direct seeded rice as an alternate method, then we should end the previous paragraph with a sentence like this: one of the proposed approaches to as an alternative to the conventional paddy rice system is direct seeded rice system. And the next paragraph can be started with direct seeded rice system instead of abrupt transition from water scarcity to direct seeded rice system. We can contrast ideas on the other hand, however, whereas often we write on the other hand with a sentence, but we don't write on one hand. So where is the first hand? So if you are writing on the other hand, then with one of the previous sentences that we are referring to, you should write on one hand. So compound sentences, they can join by a suitable conjugation like and, but, however, whereas. We can show cause and effect relationship with words like therefore, consequently. And we can show continuation of the same idea. अगर हम एक idea एक word में या एक paragraph में बयान नहीं कर पाए, we can use certain words. So the key is to remember this words: F animals or fanimals. F for furthermore, A for and, N for not only, M for moreover, A nonetheless, in addition, moreover, additionally, likewise, similarly. So this will provide you an opportunity for suitable transitions to link ideas and to create coherence between sentences, between paragraphs, between sections. The next important principle is to avoid jargon language or too much technical language, because we are trying to express, not to impress. For example, if I say aerobic rice, this means different things to different people. For an agronomist, this is a production system. For a breeder, this is a variety. For a soil scientist, it means aerobic soil conditions. So one way to get around this problem is, or to avoid this problem is, to define the term where it is described for the first time. And we should use the abbreviations consistently. Next principle is about the use of active voice and passive voice. There is no hard and fast rule, but most of the native journals, native speakers journals, or native writers, they encourage writing in active voice form. What are the advantages of active voice form? In active voice, subject perform the actions. It is more clear and concise, and it shows ownership. For example, if I write, experiments were laid out in a 3-factor split plot design and replicated thrice. Instead of this, I can write in active voice as experimental design was a 3-factor split plot with 3 replicators. That is easier to understand, and I'm presenting my information in fewer words. Second sentence is the photoperiod response was determined in a reciprocal transfer experiment. But in this sentence, this is not clear whether the authors did this experiment or they used data from some other data set. But if the author writes, we determined the photoperiod response in a reciprocal transfer experiment, it means that the writer have themselves conducted this experiment. So active voice shows the ownership. The objective of this study was to survey the popularity of different political parties in Pakistan. We surveyed the popularity of different political parties in Pakistan, and this is another example of where we can use active voice. And we should also avoid this word in this study or in this project. That is very obvious that the results we are presenting is about this study. So instead of writing in this study or in this thesis or in this article, you can just write here. But this doesn't mean that we cannot use passive voice. We can also use passive voice in certain situations. We can use passive voice for suitable transitions or where the subject is unknown or unimportant. For example, all 3 cows were vaccinated. The vaccination was repeated after every 3 hours. So here the vaccinator is not important. And the passive case makes it easier to understand. So we can use active voice, we can use passive voice, but we have to choose wisely. And I would suggest that preferably use active voice. Eighth principle is about parallel structure. This is a different, rather difficult concept. For example, so first I describe the example. Watch your thoughts, they become words. Watch your words, they become actions. Watch your actions, they become habits. Watch your habits, they become character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny. So in this code, there is repetition of words. And in scientific writing, we try to avoid this repetition of words ideally. But there are certain situations where we can use this technique by establishing certain word patterns so that the reader can easily follow your message. I give you some example. For example, if I write Super Basmati recorded the highest biomass, whereas lowest above ground biological yield was obtained in case of Shine Basmati. This is difficult for reader to write. Instead, if I write Super Basmati recorded the highest biomass, Shaheen Basmati recorded the lowest biomass. So there is repetition of words, but these 2 sentences are more balanced. So in this technique of parallel structure, we try to balance sentences. And in balancing, we balance nouns with nouns, verbs with verbs, adverbs with adverbs, adjectives with adjectives, etc. What are the advantages of this parallel structure? It makes writing more forceful, adds clarity and sophistication because scientific writing is an art, and it establishes certain word patterns that a reader can follow easily and grasp your message. Especially this parallel structure is useful when we are writing the research and discussion form. This is a paragraph from a published paper of one of my favorite writers, English scientific writers, Ken Giller. This reads as seed companies like annuals because they help avoid farmers recycling their own seeds, which is bad for business. Agronomists like annuals because they fit their metric of choice, maximizing yields. Technology salesmen like annuals because you can harvest them mechanically and all at once. Economists like annuals because they slot into established trade markets. So this is a perfect example of a parallel structure, where first we are describing the stakeholder, whether it is seed company or agronomist or technology salesman, then we repeat the word like annuals, and then we give the rational logic. This brings me to the second last technique for effective writing. We need to write numbers and units. If we are writing a number that is 10 or less than 10, we should write it in text forms, like 2 samples, 3 varieties, 7 digits. If the numbers are more than 10, we can write in digits form, like 11 cows, 12 buffaloes, 50 donkeys, etc. But if there is a series, then we need to write digits. If it contains 10 or numbers higher than 10, then we can write in digit form as well. For example, if I write 12 regions, 7 in South Punjab and 5 in North Punjab, that is okay in this form. We need to express time and measurements in numbers or numerals, even if the number is less than 10. So if we are writing time or measurements like 1 day, 3 weeks, 8 month, 8 kilometer, 9 tons, etc. Then we can write it in digital form even if the number is less than 10. And we should not add the period or the letter S at the end of unit. For example, 3 km is okay, 3 km dot or 3 kms is not okay. And you should always consider or think about units you are writing. For example, decisiemens per meter or decisiemens space per meter. There's a massive difference. First unit means 1 over decisiemen meter, whereas second unit means decisiemen over meter, and second is the correct one. So we should mind how we write the units, and we should use the same units throughout the text. We should use SI units and result units. For example, these days we use megagram instead of tons. And the last and most difficult thing is to be consistent with your writing. That is the most difficult thing, and as supervisor we have difficulties to deal student with or to encourage them to write consistently. So we need to be consistent with the use of spelling, hyphenation, capitals, abbreviations, simples, initials, numbers, punctuations. There should be no contradiction, because at one, for example, if at one place you say maize grows in spring and autumn, at another place you write maize grows in spring and autumn, this is a contradiction. This should be avoided. There should be no repetition of ideas, definition, tables and figures and abbreviation. Often we present the same data in tables and then repeat it again in figure. So this is a serious error. We should be consistent with font size, type, spacing, alignment, margins, and we should mind the order. For example, if I write rice and wheat are the two major staple food crops in Pakistan, and wheat and rice are the two major staple food crops in Pakistan, apparently it means the same thing, but actually there is a difference in terms of area, in terms of production, in terms of consumption. In Pakistan, the number one crop is wheat. So we must mind the order or seniority. So the correct sentence would be wheat and rice are the two major staple food crops in Pakistan. So we should decide, we should follow instructions for authors. For example, you should follow instructions from university if you are writing thesis, or follow instructions of a particular journal where you are submitting your article. And these things should be decided at the very start, and then we should stick to it. So far I have described how to write text. So briefly, I will touch how we can enhance the quality of our manuscript by using visuals. There are different types of information data, and we can present them differently. So if the numbers are important, then we make tables. We present the information in form of tables. If the trends are important, then we make figures. If we are going to show people or objects, then we can use pictures or line drawings. If we are using geographical data, location of the experimental site, we can use a map. And non-chronological list can be where the order is not important, we can use bullet points, and where the order is important, this list should be numbered. Just quickly, a few examples. This is an example of a table where the numbers are important. This is another example. So your table should stand alone. Stand alone means अगर कोई आपका text नहीं भी पढ़ता तो just table पढ़कर उसको आपका message समझ आ जाए. It should be properly labeled. Table number, table caption or title, footnotes where necessary, and appropriate units. And we use figures for trends. For example, this figure shows the trend of increasing population, and there is another message that urban population is increasing faster than the rural population. So ideally, a figure should have one main message. It should be understandable in 30 seconds, ideally, and we should use appropriate captions, legend, units, and source where necessary. We use line graphs for a continuous process. This graph shows area, production, and yield of wheat crop in Pakistan over a time series. We show bar graphs. We use bar graphs where the absolute numbers are important or absolute values are important. We use pie graphs where we are showing percentages. We can use flowcharts if we are describing the schematics of a particular process or different sections. We can use map for showing geography or locations. And if we are presenting a list of items in any section, for example, if you are writing discussion part or conclusion part, where on the basis of your research, you are presenting certain recommendations. And if the order of these recommendations is not important, then you can write them in any order and in bullet form. But if the order is important, कि पहले नंबर पर ये होना चाहिए, दूसरे पर ये होना चाहिए, तीसरे पर ये, then you should number it. We can include people or objects. This is mostly in the case of theses or reports. So the main message is to keep it simple, to avoid too many lines, colors, variables, and make sure that colors or patterns that you use are clearly distinguishable from one another. And always include appropriate labels, ledgers, units, footnotes. In the following talk, Dr. Sajjad will elaborate this in more detail. So this is all about my presentation. I hope you are able to, or I am able to convey the message that scientific writing is an art. In scientific writing, we write to express, not to impress. We need to balance between content and creativity. We can use visuals. That is one of the main objectives of today's workshop, to learn how to make figures, graphs, etc. Using modern softwares. And students must understand that writing concisely and clearly takes time. And I have shared 10 basic principles of effective writing, and I thank you all for your patience. Thank you very much.